Fredric Jameson's Archaeologies of the Future explores the concept of utopia, particularly its role in contemporary politics and culture. This work, the final volume in his Poetics of Social Forms series, builds on his earlier engagement with utopian themes, dating back to the 1970s. In this book, Jameson investigates the utopian form, shifting focus from utopian content, the specific desires or goals of utopian societies, to the structure and purpose of utopian thinking itself. This shift in perspective allows him to explore how utopia, as a form, can offer new ways of thinking about society, politics, and culture in the era of late capitalism or postmodernity. Jameson argues that utopia, at its core, is not about the realization of specific desires, such as perfect equality or a life of comfort. Rather, it is about the process of imagining alternatives to the present, particularly within the context of capitalism, which seems increasingly invulnerable and without clear opposition. By focusing on the form of utopia, rather than its content, Jameson suggests that utopian thinking can resist the limitations of late capitalist society and offer a critique that goes beyond traditional political theories, such as liberalism. One of the central distinctions Jameson makes is between the utopian program and the utopian impulse. Borrowing from the philosopher Ernst Bloch, a utopian program is a concrete plan for achieving an ideal society, while the utopian impulse is more abstract, representing the desire or drive to imagine a better world. Jameson contends that achieving a utopian society often leads to the betrayal of the original impulse, as the act of wishing for something better is itself inherently bound up in the current system's contradictions. This idea shifts the focus from imagining what a perfect society would look like to understanding the structural and formal properties of the act of wishing for such a society. Jameson further connects his analysis to Romantic literary theory, particularly Coleridge's distinction between imagination and fancy. In this context, imagination represents the ability to perceive and comprehend the larger system, while fancy indulges in the small details of everyday life. Jameson uses this distinction to mirror one of the paradoxes of utopia. It is both an expression of rage against the suffering caused by capitalism, imagination, and a form of creative indulgence in imagining a better world, fancy. This tension between grand political ideals and everyday pleasures is central to the utopian dilemma in Jameson's view. Jameson also addresses the political implications of utopian thought, particularly the challenge of subversive art and culture within capitalism. He draws on thinkers like Herbert Marcuse to argue that while art can critique the existing social order, it is often marginalized and separated from political and economic spheres, rendering its impact relatively weak. However, utopian art and literature, especially science fiction, SF, offers a unique opportunity to explore alternative realities and question the dominant system. Science fiction for Jameson is not just a genre but a socio-economic subgenre that provides a critical space to engage with the idea of radical difference and systemic totality. In this way, SF becomes a vehicle for the utopian imagination, allowing us to conceive of alternatives to the current world. Jameson also explores the challenge of representing utopia in terms of time and change. The utopian project involves imagining a break with the existing system, but this raises the question of how to transition from the present to this radically different future. Jameson echoes the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau in suggesting that the cause must become the effect, meaning that to achieve utopia, we must already be the kinds of people who can live in it. This creates a paradox, as utopia cannot fully address how to make this break, or what to wish for once we have achieved it. One of Jameson's most profound insights is that utopia's greatest achievement may lie in its failure to provide concrete solutions. He argues that the inability to fully imagine a utopian future is not due to a lack of creativity on the part of individuals, but is a result of the ideological closure imposed by the current system. In other words, we are prisoners of the capitalist system's totalizing logic, which limits our capacity to think beyond it. Utopia's highest moment, then, is this very failure, the recognition that we cannot easily imagine a perfect society from within the constraints of the present. Jameson uses science fiction to illustrate this argument further, suggesting that the alien in SF represents the utopian possibility of radical difference. The alien is not simply a physical other, but a metaphor for the unknown potential within human history and social praxis. In this sense, the alien body becomes a stand-in for utopian possibilities that are currently beyond our comprehension, but remain latent within our collective imagination. This dialectic of identity and difference is central to utopian thinking, as it challenges us to imagine systems that are fundamentally different from what we know. A key issue in utopian thought, according to Jameson, is how to articulate the transition from the present system to a utopian future. Utopia cannot provide a blueprint for this transition, because it is necessarily unimaginable from within the confines of the current system. Instead, Jameson suggests that the break itself, the moment of revolutionary change, becomes the focus of utopian thought. This break represents a meditation on the impossible and the unrealizable, forcing us to confront our relationship to the future in a way that goes beyond conventional political strategies. Jameson also addresses the question of whether there can be a minimal utopia, one that retains universal validity for all societies. He explores the idea that even the simplest utopian demands, such as ending hunger, are historically situated and bound up with complex ideological themes. This suggests that any content-based approach to utopia will inevitably fall short, as it cannot escape the limitations of its historical context. Jameson argues that the truth of utopia lies in its form, not its content. Drawing on Theodor Adorno's concept of negative dialectics, he suggests that utopian truth is not something substantive that we can extract and use to build a future society. Instead, it functions as a critical tool designed to expose and discredit the claims of the current system to full representation. Utopia's role is not to offer a positive vision of the future but to critique and demystify the present, allowing us to imagine a radically different future that is not bound by the limitations of the current system.